Economic liberalism is the concept that a government should not try to control prices, rents, and or wages, but instead let open competition and forces of demand and supply create an equilibrium between them which benefits the majority of citizens. In general, it favors the redistribution of income through taxes and welfare payments. Economic liberalism arose during the 18th century's Age of Enlightenment, and it replaced European mercantilism, which held that international trade should be controlled by the state. When we take a look at the political definition, economic liberalism sees the primary aim of representative government as the preservation of individual liberty and the maximization of freedom of choice. For example, freedom of speech and freedom of choice. In other words, all individuals stand equal before law without any class privileges. Economic liberalism usefully describes theories of the 17th and 18th centuries that defended the individual liberty to buy, sell, work, employ, and trade without restriction or governmental interference. So, who is behind this term called economic liberalism? When was it conceived? Why? And what is it based on? Economic liberalism was first laid out by Adam Smith of Scotland in his book An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nations, which was published in 1776. Adam Smith believed that if markets were unregulated and each individual were allowed to act in their own enlightened self-interest, that it would provide the greatest possible benefits for all of society. Smith referred to this lack of regulation, balanced by self-interest, as the invisible hand. Initially, economic liberalism had to contend with the supporters of feudal privileges for the wealthy and the rights of kings to run national economies in their own personal interest. But by the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, these were largely defeated. And even today, economic liberalism is associated with classic liberalism, neoliberalism, and even some schools of conservatism. Okay, now that we have the background of economic liberalism, let's have a look at the principles. One of the basic principles of economic liberalism is that humans are, by their nature, selfish or self-interested creatures. Classical liberal economists believe that by allowing each individual to act in their own self-interest, that the markets will self-regulate. In other words, this means that the market for products and services will determine the prices and availability of those products and services. Another basic principle is the sanctity of private property. This means that minimal property should be owned by government because out of self-interest, individuals will do the most to protect and maximize the value of that property. The government, therefore, should have little power to control, regulate, confiscate, or interfere with the use of the private property of individuals. This includes property in the form of real estate, as well as the other positions of value. Even though Smith and other economic liberalists see a very limited role for the government in markets and daily lives of people, he does believe that it is a proper function of the government to provide some public goods, for example, providing of roads, schools, infrastructure, law enforcement, etc., that cannot be efficiently implemented by private entities. So taking into consideration everything that has been said, economic liberalism could be a theory worth implementing, I would say, if only it did what it was supposed to do, taking into account the diverse socio-political structures. In my opinion, it somehow presents itself as a wolf in sheep clothes. It prescribes a one-fits-all solution for every problem, regardless of the particular circumstances and starting point. And in this context, economic liberalism fails to recognize the uneven distribution of resources, property rights, and power, and that the diverse socio-political structure could imply different solutions.